Okay, so counting techniques. We've obviously at this point gone through the products we're going to count, where we count them in the count tool, and also the mindset you bring. So here we're going to get a bit more specific about different types of counting. So obviously when we count our vessels or products, we have specific techniques we've developed. First, most important possibly, is the counting order. So again, the idea here is that we should always count in the same way. We talked about it with making up the map, but always follow the order when counting. You count the top down to the bottom. So if you've got a stack of shelves, you count the top one, and then the next one, the next one down to the bottom to the floor. We always count left to right in all things, whether talking about wells or shelves. And then we also count back to front as well, meaning that if you're counting like a column of mixed bottles, you'd scan the one at the back of that column first, and then the next one forward, etc. The idea behind that is if you need to pull things out to check what they are, you can count them as you put them back. And then the one exception to this top to bottom, left to right, back to front is when we have stacked cases. And in that case, we count from the bottom to the top. The idea there is so you'd scan the bottom case and then the next case up and next case up. And because of fact you're going to have to pull that stack apart to confirm that those cases are what they say they are and that they're full, the idea is that then you enter the counts for the bottom case first, have the flaps open and look and check what's in there, and then you put the next case on top and enter that count, etc., etc. So you're sort of rebuilding the stack as you count it. And just a reminder, there's no accurate way to do that other than pulling everything apart. The only exception, I guess, where I wouldn't bother pulling a stack apart is if you have, say, a stack of Budweisers, and it's Budweiser all the way through that case. If it was a brand new client, I certainly would pull that apart, but in generally that's the one occasion where if you've got a strict column where it's only one product in the stack, you can probably be confident, but again, it's specific to the client, so I check first. But generally, moving forward, you'll be able to avoid that. So really simple, anything that is open, what we call a partial vessel, we're going to weigh it. We'll get into specifically how we do this for kegs, but if we're talking about an open liquor bottle or an open wine bottle, as we saw in the last one, we simply place the cursor in the weigh count column of the count sheet, and then you put the correct bottle on the scale, making sure that we're lining up the correct name and size of vessel. Then the scale is going to take like 2 seconds to take that weight, so you want to be not waiting for the scale but thinking about your next move. So after you've placed the correct bottle on the scale, the next thing is you look at the count map and see which bottle comes next. Then you pick up that bottle with one hand, and then use your other hand to pick up the bottle which is on the scale. And then before you try and put that bottle away which you've just weighed, the next thing to do is to put the bottle you're going to be weighing next, put that on the scale as soon as possible. And then after you've done that, return the bottle you just weighed and pick up the next one. This is just a technical point that eventually it's going to be the scale that slows you down. And so the quickest way to do this is to hurry up the scale by making it start weighing that product as soon as possible, and then the time it takes to weigh that bottle, you can be busy putting away the next one or putting away the last bottle and picking up the next one. But if you get in the habit of putting away the bottle you just weighed and then looking for the next one, you're going to slow yourself down considerably. Okay, so counting full vessels, anything that which is full, you can either weigh it because it's just going to come out as one, or you can count it. In the liquor store area, you don't weigh the 3 full bottles of Jack Daniels, you just enter a count of 3. So there's 2 ways to do it. If you're using the voice command, you just enter 1 enter, 3 enter, 6 enter, whatever it is. Alternatively, you can use the keys on your laptop, so just use the numbered buttons and press the number 4 and then enter. When you're using voice command, it takes a bit of getting used to, but you need to speak normally. Try and not adjust the sound of your voice too much because you're speaking to voice command, so don't shout at it, don't increase or decrease the sound of your voice, and kind of do it at regular speed. You can also use commands. The voice command allows you to move the cursor around, so if you do move up or move down 4, the cursor will move up either 1 cell or 4. You can move right, and so it'll move over to the right. If you're in the weigh count column and you need to move to scan a barcode, you can do move right. That's useful obviously when the computer isn't within easy reach. You'll sometimes find this if you're in a large liquor store area. You kind of set it over to the side and then scan and count using voice command. Another time it's really useful is if you're up a ladder and therefore you're using your hands to hold on to things or perhaps to handle products. It's really useful to be able to scan bottles, move the cursor so it moved between weighing mode and scanning mode, etc. But it said remember those commands. And then mix zones with partials and full vessels. This is common behind a bar. You'll often see that they've got on the back bar they'll have an open bottle of a product, and then there'll be 1 or 2 bottles of full that same product behind it, ready to go for when they run out that first bottle. So the technique here is to put that first partial vessel on the scale at the same time as you say the count for the full vessels. So you'll say like 2 enter as you put the partial. Maybe there's 2 full ones and a partial bottle. You put the partial on and say 2 enter, and the software will take that 2 count before the weight of the partial bottle is entered. It's all to do with timing here, but if you get the hang of this, it can be pretty fast. So worth taking the time to sort of get comfortable doing that. And then annoyingly, we do have what I'd call a pull-out zone. So unfortunately, sometimes it's necessary to move things around and pull inventory out of its storage location to see what's there and count it accurately. I say unfortunately because ideally we'd have things set up in a way that we didn't have to move them to count them accurately, but it's inevitable in certain situations. Over time, you can work with the clients as it really burns time. If you're having to move things a lot, it's also frustrating. But to begin with, remember we're a service business, so to begin with, when you have a new client, you're just going to have to basically accommodate their storage practices, and then the extent to which you're able to get them to follow best practice with storage will also increase your speed a lot. So I'd start by accommodating them, and then see how effective you can be about getting them to improve how they store things. Also, when you're doing a new trial, it says not the time to be telling them how to run their business. We're trying to impress them. It's annoying if you have to pull the inventory out and pull down the stack cases, but you have no chance of being accurate unless you do that. And it's essential not to shy away from this work, however frustrating it is. Point is, you're going to be annoyed. Oh, I have to pull apart this case again, or have to pull in this stack. There's no getting away from it. You have to do it every single time you're at that bar until you get them to install a rack where you can do it more easily. Just remember that we price things including the challenges we have. So, our suggestion would be that we're going to price them appropriately, and then later we'll give them a discount if they address the issue properly. Another issue is shop products in coolers. So a lot of bars will have a collection, all the sort of really common shop products like Jaeger, Fireball, Rumple Mint, Sambuca, that sort of stuff. Often they'll be collected together in a cooler somewhere, sometimes in a roll-top cooler or reach-in. Typically these zones are not set in their order. It's a place where the expectation of everything being in the same place, while we want to have the same bottles always there, like 1 Rumpy, 1 Fireball, 1 Jaeger, whatever it is, that won't always be the case. And honestly, this is a place where they tend to just have a kind of everything is there, but it changes. And so the way to ensure you're accurate is to pull each and every one of these bottles out of the cooler, so you've got them all lined up in front of you, and then weigh them according to the order of the counting map as you put them away. The way I typically go about doing this is, first time I make up the map, I put the less popular products at the back of that map, and so scan those first, and then I save the Jaeger and the Fireball and the more popular ones for the end of the map, so that when I'm finished counting and putting those products away, the most popular products will be at the front where the bartenders want them. And the idea about pulling everything out and then putting them back in as you weigh them is that you can be certain that you don't miss bottles, because any bottle which is left out after you've finished through the map, obviously you need to add it to the zone. So that's the technique that we use there. Then zone counts or visual checks are mandatory after you complete each zone. Some zones, like liquor store shelves with full bottles, loan themselves very well to zone counts. Other areas like mixed 6-packs don't so well. So if you can't do a formal zone count, we encourage you to look back through, just visually scan the zone, perhaps check how many products are in that zone. But as with all things, your expectation is you will make mistakes, and it needs to have a technique built in where you think about how you're going to catch those mistakes. And the easiest one, as said, is to double check your work, and then wherever you can, do zone checks. So when you're doing zone checks, particularly say in a liquor storage area, there might be 10 different products on that shelf, so perhaps there's 50 bottles. So you're going to individually enter the counts for the individual products on the correct line in the count column, and then after you finish counting the individual products, you can say save it, and then you need to do a zone count. And a little lesson on counting to do your zone counts. Obviously you guys know how to count, But from experience, we've sort of developed a way that we find the fastest and most accurate. So if you do 1, 2, 3, 4, you're obviously saying double the amount of numbers. So we tend to count in twos, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then rather at that point to go 12, 14, 16, 18, it gets difficult when you get up to like 32, 34, 36, and you have to remember where you're at. So what we tend to do is to use 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 20, 2, 4, 6, 8, 30, 2, 4, 6, 8, 40, 2, 4, 6, 8, 50, 2, 4, 6, 8, 60. And you can see from my example there, it's pretty easy to say those numbers quickly. And so we strongly encourage instead you to use that 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 20 technique. It's easier to say, it's quicker, and I think it's less prone to making errors. So using blind zone counts, so again using the liquor storage shelf example, after you've counted the individual products, you would use the voice command and say save it, and then Excel would take a second to calculate that zone count. But rather than wait and look what the zone count is, we encourage you to look away from the screen and then go and count all the items in that zone without checking it, meaning that you're doing a blind count, and then you can reconcile what your count was versus what the software says, so that you're not sort of counting to an expectation, in which case you'll always tend to have the count come up where you want it to be. Zone counts right to left, so as we know, we count left to right, always in the same order. When we're doing our zone counts, typically we count the other direction from right to left. What it means is that you're looking at the product from a different angle, and sometimes you'll catch a bottle which is sort of hiding behind another one from one angle or whatever. But it's said, always good idea to do the opposite. If you're counting left to right, to do the zone right to left. So visual checks, some zones don't lend themselves easy to zone count, such as zones with broken 6 packs of beer. In the cases where your zone counts can't be completed accurately, instead of doing a formal zone count where you're matching it to the exact number, scroll back through the counts you entered and double check your work. And then if you're in doubt, said check it again. If you follow the correct procedures, miscounts should be extremely rare. Point being, you're always going left to right, pulling things out and then putting them away as we count them. And also, we're kind of mitigating unhelpful actions. Just today, we're a training employee at the moment. He had a challenge yesterday where he counted some wine that was put into a Tito's case. Kind of a booby trap. At the end of the day, we're a professional inventory counting service, so it's important that we have a way of finding these booby traps and getting our counts correct. Splitting zones. So when you're doing your zone count, if you get to about 60 or more, it becomes very challenging to do zone counts. If your zone count is off by 1 or 2, it becomes difficult to find where the error is. So at some point, we recommend splitting your zones. I'd say suggestion of 60 or more. Suggest splitting that zone into a left-hand side and a right-hand side, and then you'll have obviously counts of like 30 and 30, and it makes the set a lot easier to do those zone counts, and most critically, when you're off on your zone count, it's much easier to find where the error is at. Word on updating the map. So our system is based on the belief that every item behind a bar should have a fixed location. So in general, the map will match this order, and it's best to move products to match the map rather than changing the map constantly. The idea there is that normally the map has some thought behind it, and when things constantly change, you want to put them back in the same order. That being said, this is often a work in progress at the bars, so you'll find that with newer bars, they're still in the sort of mode of just putting everything anywhere. There's sort of a battle between us whether we keep on putting things back in the same order, which we think makes sense, and perhaps we discuss with the manager, or whether we keep scanning those products every time. The one thing is, if we scan the products and allow them to be in a different order every time, we'll never ever make any progress with the bartenders about understanding the benefits of having them in the same order. So you can scan them, but it doesn't really solve or help us in the long run. Point here is that if you don't train the client to be more organized, you'll be wasting time every time you count their inventory. Managers will frequently argue about why things need to move around. Our view is that that's a load of BS. There's no reason for things to move around. The only reason things move around is when there's no established order, and the only downside of having established order is the work required to establish it. So we're really don't have a soft opinion on this. While we can accommodate people, we think it makes sense, and it tends to be just disorganized people that are arguing against it rather than any sort of sense behind it. Sometimes you'll hear a manager saying that, well, you just want it to be organized so you can count it fast. That's not the case. It's based on a map because most profitable bars are organized, and the best way to count an organized bar is to use a map. So it's informed, I said, from our belief and philosophy about what we think well-run bars do rather than designed to be fast. And the sort of thought here is that if 90% of the items are in the same place as last time, meaning that a decent amount, 10% is changing, having a system that uses that past order as a starting point is smarter than scanning every product every time before you count. Just to say it, this is an essential difference between BarEye system and other systems. So it's something that we really believe in. We think it makes a lot of sense. I would be ready to understand why it makes sense and explain it, because it definitely is a core difference, and in your sales meetings it will probably come up. So learning new products. So a weakness of using the mapping system is because we don't scan every product every time we count it for speed, if you're not paying attention, it's possible to make errors and count the wrong vessel size or the wrong product on a counting line. You therefore need to become skilled at identifying different vessels. Remember, a vessel is a specific product and also specific size, meaning that if you see a name and it's a 750, you need to recognize that and add the new line for the 750. If you anticipate them switching back, I'll often leave both the liter and the 750 size in there to remind me that I need to pay attention to both of them. And basically this idea or ability just comes from knowing the products very well. So beware of the easy to confuse products. Grey Goose I've used before as an example. The only difference between a Grey Goose, pear and citrus is a subtle difference in the color of the ring near the top of the bottle. Similarly with Reposado and Añejo tequilas, the bottles typically are identical, except for being marked as Reposado and Añejo. The color of the liquid inside might be a little bit darker in the case of the Añejo, but again, you need to know which tequila bottles look very similar and be sure that you're always counting the right one. And if you're not paying attention to the fact that, hey, this is high-end tequila, I can easily mistake this, you'll make silly errors. And the other thing is, when you find a new product, take the time to read the labels. Take a minute, if you can, grab out the other similar related product and look for the subtle differences. It may just be color. It might be a special edition bottle, which is basically the same as the regular one but has a funny barcode. Sometimes it doesn't. But again, taking some time to educate yourself, hey, is this a new flavor of this vodka, or is it just a special edition, means you save time entering it into the mass list. I'm sort of piggybacking here on an example where Absolute have some special edition bottles sometimes. Normally they do have a different barcode, but because they only show up for a short while, we just continue counting them as Absolute regular. We didn't even bother entering the barcodes for them, and it saved us having to mess around with additional products. So there's a few tips and tricks on counting technique. Next we're going to get into the important topic of keeping safe while you're at work.